Hey guys, Will here with Create Studio, and in this video I'm going to go over this iCloud animation sequence, where to find it, and how to recreate it in Create Studio 3. Alright, so I'm on the home page inside of Create Studio 3, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Lightning Builder, and then I'm going to choose my aspect ratio as 16:9, and then I'm looking for agency emoji style, right? So I'm going to click and open this up, and then here is my iCloud scene here, this intro white, so I'm going to go ahead and add that scene, go to editor, and then I'll skip the music selection for now. And Create Studio 3 is now building out my scene here. And so here it is. If I play this back, we can see what that looks like. All right, so we've got our animation sequence playing with our emojis animating there and all the icons around it representing all of our products there, right? So that is a really cool, fast and efficient way to get this kind of template going to kind of meet your needs, right? So now what if I want to tweak the different icons and background colors, right? So all I need to do is select my scene here. And then under settings, you'll be able to adjust all the colors that make up this scene, as well as the icons, swap them out for assets that you may have, or change colors to make them fit the needs that you want. Or you leave them the same because this is exactly what you want. And maybe all you want to do is adjust the emojis, right? So if I double click on this scene, it opens up the group, and I'll scroll down. And then here in emoji 1, I'll open up this group by double clicking. And here is my emoji mail, right? So I'll click on this guy. And then under settings and customize, here's where I can then custom and make him who I want him to be, right? So if I click on hats, right now, here's where I can sort through the different types of hats that he has, right? Or I can just take away the hat and change his hair, right? So maybe I want to make his hair like this. And then I want to give him some different glasses. So let's give him some cool glasses like that. And then maybe I want to adjust his facial hair, right? So I can come here and let's go with just this mustache maybe, or how about this little goatee look, right? So you do that. And then from here, what you can do is you can add you can adjust eyelashes, you can change accessories, earrings, piercings, logos if you want. Let's go to colors here. And from here, this is where you can adjust the skin, right? So we can make him a little lighter if we want to, change his skin tone up a little bit. We can also change the color of his hair. So let's go ahead and make his hair black, right? So it's just a lot of different ways that you can do this, right? So if I go to his if I go to his colors and I go back to his glasses here, I can change them. So maybe I want them to be, you can make them be black, or let's have them be this kind of bluish color here, right? So just different things you can do to customize your emoji characters to really make them your own, right? And again, if I go back to my scenes here and I scroll down to, this is inside that main group, and here is the character there. If I play it back, you'll see animated now. And then here is the second emoji. So it applies the same way, right? If I double click in emoji 2's group and I come up here, it'll open up the emoji female. And here is where I can then customize her as well. So you can hats, hair, and you can adjust the glasses there if you want. So we can give her some of these star glasses instead, right? So then if I go back to the scene here and then play it back, you'll see that it goes from the one I customized there to this one, right? So again, it's really easy to go in and tweak these emojis. The same process applies if you want. Maybe you just want to use one, you can delete out however many you want. I could delete that emojis if I want to, if I only want two. So there's a lot of different things that Create Studio 3 allows you to be super customizable to kind of fit the needs that you may have. All right, so this scene is available for all access users. So you can go in there and immediately start working with this scene and making it your own. Now, if you don't have this and have access to it, let's go ahead and show you how you can recreate this from scratch. All right, so the first thing I want to do is let's click on the plus icon and let's create a rectangle. Now let's go ahead and maximize this rectangle to the size of our canvas. And then under settings, we're going to go to color and we're going to make this background white. All right, so to stay organized, let's go ahead and right click our rounded rectangle and click on rename, and let's call it BG for background. All right, so next up we need to create the cloud effect, right? So let's go ahead and go back to our plus icon and let's create 4 circles. So I'm going to press circle here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so to keep things even more organized, what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and group these 4 circles. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to right click and then select group. And then we can rename this group and we can let's call it our cloud. All right. Okay, so now I'm inside my group and I've already resized my circles. And so if I click on this first circle, you'll see that I took it down to 51% and then I sized it up right here. And I took that second circle, again, I took that down to 38% right here. And then I just moved it right above. And I'm starting to build out the cloud. You can kind of see it now, right? And if you click on this guy, this is my far right one. I took that to 49%. And then the circle in the center, that one is at about 68%. You also notice that the colors are a little different, right? So these bottom two, or the ones on the left, if I click on the bottom one and go to my color scheme, you'll see that I've got this center gradient selected. And then on my first color here, I've selected this lighter color. And then over here, it's going from this color to this color right here, right? So it's a little darker, right? So you kind of see it gives it a nice gradient. It's the same with this one. And then on these guys, it's a little different. They're a little darker. So they're clearly going from a lighter tone to a darker tone over here, right? So same thing with this guy. Come over here. And again, you can choose any types of colors for these clouds you want, but if you're trying to recreate these exact clouds, this is kind of the color scheme you want. Just choose the blue towards the center there and find that lighter to dark. And you kind of draw it out from there. So it's pretty cool. So you can see you have all that color flexibility within Create Studio. All right, so now I've got some keyframes on this first one here. Let me just show you what it's doing. All right, so right now it's just moving up and then it's disappearing, right? The opacity is going to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'll double click on this keyframe here and you'll see that I've got position, scale, and opacity selected, right? Because all three of those keyframes are being utilized for this animation to work. All right, so now let's go to our second circle and let's apply these. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that second circle, click Add Animation, select my position, scale, and my opacity. Make sure I go to easing and smooth is selected for both the in and the out. All right, so once I've got that there, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. And then I'm just going to click on this line in between both keyframes and just align them with the bottom keyframe that I have there, right? So I really have it at about 1 second and it's going to about 1.25 seconds, right? Something like that. All right, so if I select that first keyframe, I'm not going to do anything to it. I like the settings as is. It's that end keyframe that I want to adjust, right? So right now it's staying as is, but we want it to end up here, about right here or so. And then I want to take its opacity down to 0, right? So now you'll see that both are now moving and they dissipate together. All right, so the same thing with this bottom right one. Let's start here first. Let's go ahead and right click, add animation. Let's go to properties. We're doing position, scale, and opacity, easing, smooth, in and out. And if I click off of here, let's go ahead and move this guy to the center. I can zoom in again so you can see. And then again, that first one stays where it's at. I take that end keyframe and I'm going to move this guy. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Take that end keyframe here and I want to move it up this way like so. And then we're going to take its opacity down to 0. All right, so now you'll see that they're all moving together and moving away. So now all that leaves us is with this large one. And so I'm going to add an animation again. And let's go to our properties. Let's do position, scale, and opacity again. And then our easing is also going to be smooth for both in and out. And then let's go ahead and move our keyframe to be in line with the rest of them. And again, with this one, it's going to be a little different. So I'm going to click that end keyframe and I'm going to make this scale. We're going to have it go to 88. We're going to scale up a little bit, but we're going to also take away its opacity. So it's back to 0. All right. So now let's scale in a little so we have a view of all of our cloud here. And so if I do this, it then dissipates and the cloud looks nice. So if I go back to our main timeline here, here is where we have our product started. All right, so now we're going to give it a little bit more flair and we're going to create a little bit of this glow effect that goes behind it. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so what I need to do is let's go ahead and go back to our plus icon and we're going to select a circle there. And now I'm going to go ahead and right click and then click on group. And then let's go ahead and right click and let's rename this group and let's call this our glow effect. All right, so now if I go inside here, I double click, what I can do is I can then select my circle and then I'll go to my color. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to one of my saved settings here and let's go to this guy. Actually, you know what? This one looks okay. And we're going to change it to this gradient here. And let's actually just do that one. So I have some favorites saved, but you can choose any types of colors that you want. But really just I'm trying to match some of those clouds to kind of give it a little bit of a different effect. All right, so the second thing I do is I need to go to my effects and components and I'm going to go to my glow effect, or sorry, my blur effect. And I'm going to drag that onto my canvas. So now here you can see that it's there and I'll pull the strength up. Let's make it about right there. So, and then we can always resize our blur effect and bring it down a little bit more, like about right here. All right, so far so good. I like what that's doing. All right, so now let's go back to our main timeline and let's size up this blur. So I'm just gonna put this blur about right there, and you can see it's sitting right there, kind of on top of the clouds there. So it kind of covers up some of those lines a little bit, but it kind of helps give us a little bit more of a cloud effect, right? So that's looking pretty nice. All right, so our next step for this glow effect is, if you can see that as the circles animate out, the glow is still there. So what I need to do is I need to add a keyframe animation to make that glow effect disappear at the same time as well. So let's go ahead and right click. Let's go ahead and hit animation, and we're gonna go ahead and just choose opacity for this one. All right, so what I can do is let's go ahead and find the spot where everything starts to disappear, and it sounds like it's about right here. So I'll start that effect right there, and we'll take that keyframe and drag it to right there. So let's zoom in so you can see. So I've got that started there. And on this second keyframe, we want it to dissipate by the time it hits there, so we can pull this keyframe back to here. All right, so that first one, on the properties, our opacity is set to 100. On that second keyframe, we're gonna go to our properties, and the opacity is gonna be set to 0. All right, so now when I play this back, you'll see that everything disappears in a nice fashion like it should, right? So we've got the cloud built out. Now let's go ahead and start working with the icons and the emojis. All right, so to set up our icons, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my media, and you'll see I already have a bunch of icons imported into my session here. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag in our photos icon right here onto my track. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click on my photos, and then I'm gonna go to group, and then I'm gonna go ahead and rename this group, and let's just call it icons 1. All right. Now I can double click in here, and you'll see that here is my photos icon. And then if I go and click on it and go to my settings, I'm gonna go ahead and scale it down just a little bit, right, to about right here. So about 240. And I'm gonna go ahead and click the plus button and add a circle. All right. So I'm gonna drag that circle underneath my photos, and I'm gonna go over to my settings, and I'm gonna drag the scale up so it covers the outer perimeter of my icon there, right? Now I can change the color. Right now it's blue. I'm just gonna go ahead and color match it to this white right here. All right, so far so good. And what I can do too is I'm gonna trim this down so it's not so long. We're gonna make it about 2 seconds and then trim it down. And then what I can do is I'm gonna group these two, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and right click, hit group, rename it, and let's call this one our, just call it photo. All right, so we've got this photo group made, and we're gonna add 2 icons per group, right? Just to organize it that way. Just because I'm doing these 2 rotations that I'm gonna show you as we work through this. All right, so now let's go ahead and add a second app, and let's go ahead and put our clock app in here, and let's just go ahead and drag this right here for now. And then again, I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the clock here. I'm gonna go ahead and resize this down to a scale of, I think I was at 240. You kind of want them to match so they're all the same size. And then I'm gonna go ahead and select a circle. So I'm gonna add a circle, I should say. So I'm gonna add a circle here, and I'm gonna drag this underneath. And just so I have continuity, I'm gonna go back into my photos and click on my circle and see what my scale was. It was at 96. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to our icons here. Now I can take this circle and I can go to my scale and I can make it 96. All right, so now the same thing I did with the photo app, I can go to my, my color for the background here, and I can click on my color picker and then click this color black here that kind of matches. So it's got this rounded same color as the perimeter circle, right? So far so good. Now I can select the clock and the circle together by holding shift and then selecting both of them with my mouse, right click, and then select group. And let's rename this guy, and let's call it our, let's call it clock, right? Okay, so now we're good to go. And you know what I might do here is let's go ahead and trim this guy down so he's the length of that there. All right, so now we've got our photos and our clock built. So now let's create some animations to create a transition that happens between the photo and the clock itself. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to go ahead and click my photos group here. I'm gonna right click and hit add animation. I'm gonna go ahead and select scale, and then my easing I'll leave as smooth for both the in and the out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and move these so they're about right here, and I'm gonna drag this end keyframe a little bit closer in so it's a little faster as it happens. All right, so let me zoom in so you can kind of even see a little better about what I'm working with. All right, so for our first keyframe, we're gonna leave it as is. It's kind of set in the scale that it's at. Now in the second keyframe, I'm gonna go ahead and go to my properties here, and I'm just gonna scale it up just a little bit, right? So it's gonna give me this push up, and then so if I go here, zooms up a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and right click again, add animation, and we're going to go ahead and do a scale and opacity for this one. So we're going to click scale and opacity, and the easing will leave as is, smooth for in and out. And then what I'm going to do is let's drag these out here, and then let's bring this guy in just a little bit there. All right, so same for this one. We're going to leave the starting keyframe animation the same, and then we're going to go ahead and choose our ending keyframe, and we are going to scale this down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it back down like this, and then I'm going to take the opacity and take it to 0. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and overlap my keyframes here too, so we have a little bit of that going on. So now when I play this back, it does this nice little transition. So it scales up, zooms out, and then disappears, right? And so what I can do is I'm going to overlap my clock here now right on top. So that disappears, and then this one's going to animate in, right? So it kind of gives it this really cool animated effect. Okay, so now let's create the animation in for the clock. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and right click on the clock. I'm going to hit add animation, and we're going to go ahead to our properties here, and we're going to do scale and opacity. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this guy over to the start. And our first keyframe, I'm going to have it go to my properties here, and I'm going to have it match the scale of our ending app icon here, which is at, I think, 109%. So if I click on that end keyframe, go to properties, go to this, or sorry, the starting scale here. This is at 109% on the scale there. So if I come over to my clock and I click on that first keyframe, go to my properties, let's scale it. So it's going to start and come in at the same size as the photo one is disappearing at, right? And then scaling down. And then we're going to put our opacity, we're going to start it at 0, right? And then for our end keyframe, we're going to go back to our properties, and then we're going to have it scale to 100, which is fine. And the opacity will be at 100, which is what we want. And I'll bring this in so it happens a little faster, and then I'll drag this over so that it starts right away, right? And let's see how this transition is working so far. Okay, I think it's pretty good. We can align it a little bit here in a second, but I think we're on the right track there. So it goes there to that one, right? So that is looking really good, and I'm like the way that's working. All right, so, and then again, what you can do if you were adding more icons into this group is you could then add this same animation sequence that you created for the photo here, and then do that for the same for the clock as well. All right, so now I'm back in the main timeline here, and I've got the icons group that I just created and assembled my photos and clock working, right? So if I scale through here, you'll see that there is the work I have. I go back to the main timeline, and here is that said group. Now I'm gonna go ahead and click on this icons one group, and I'm gonna group this. All right, so I'm gonna click group, and then I'm just gonna rename this and just call this icons itself. And then inside of here is where I will house all of my groups of different icons. So this is my first set of icons, right? And then I'll create another one, and you can add another group and add and add and add as you need to, right? To kind of create these layers, right? And we'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So what I need to do is I need to select my icons one group here, go over to properties, and we're gonna scale this down. It's a little large, right? So right now it's at 100%. Let's just go ahead and make it about 37% or so. And then I'm gonna right click, add animation, and let's go to properties and choose position, scale, and opacity. All right, our easing will leave as smooth for both in and the out. All right, now with my first keyframe selected, I'm gonna go ahead and have it start right here towards the bottom left corner here. And then I'm going to go to my properties, and we're going to set the opacity. We're gonna set it to 0, right? Because it's gonna fade in, all right? Now what I can do is, since I've got my start keyframe set, I can then click on the line and then drag that to the start of my keyframe there. So right here. All right, so far so good. So that's where it starts. And for my end keyframe, I want it to end about right here or so. And then I'm gonna go to my properties, and again, our opacity is at 100, so that's where I want it to be, right? So I can have it do, it's gonna do a little of this. All right, so that's a nice little setup, and then it will then rotate to the clock. And then if you had other groups, icons, it would then shift to the other groups as well, and they would animate it as well. So this is the setup that you would do if you're gonna recreate multiple icons. You just repeat these steps to kind of create these same animations, right? All right, so now what we need to do is we need to create the rotation effect. So let's go ahead and do that now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and right click again on my icons one group, hit add animation, go to my properties, and I'm gonna choose rotation. All right, so I'm I'm gonna go ahead and drag this out to about right here, and then we'll drag this guy out way over here. All right, so the first one, we're gonna leave at our properties rotation of 0. All right, and then for our second keyframe, we're gonna go to properties and we're gonna change this rotation to 90. All right, so now when I play this back, it'll play, and then it's got this nice little rotation going on. All right, and then what we can do is we can actually overlap it on top of this keyframe so we can kind of have a better feel. And again, if you need it to be faster, you can pull your keyframe in closer and it'll be faster, but we're gonna go ahead and just kind of keep it this slow rotation, right? So it comes in, and then as that second one changes, it rotates, right? So pretty cool way to create some movement and some animations into your scenes here, right? All right, so now let's look at what that looks like as an entire group with multiple groups of icons added. All right, so if you see here, all my icons, if I drag this across, they kind of all start in the middle, and then they're at an opacity of 0, right? Which is where I get, if I zoom in here on these keyframes, you'll see that that's where it starts off at, and then it dissolves up so that you see them and they separate out, and then they start to rotate, and they transition to another set of icons, right? And then if you wanted to, you could keep it going, but I've only got 2 sets to show you, right? I've got that laid out for the next set too. So here is our cloud, and then here is the next icon, right? So again, it just works its way up. And then what I've done here for this first set is these keyframes are all the same. They're really just showing you how the opacity, if I double click in here, we've got position, scale, and opacity, and our easiness set to in and out and smooth, right? And I've set that first one. If we go to our properties here, I can then pull this out just a little bit so you can see it. But we go from basically 0 for everything, right? And then it all scales up, right? You see the opacity moving up, and our scale scales up a little bit. And then they settle in, right? And then they start to rotate. We've got a rotation keyframe going on here for rotation. And then that is then rotating them all out as they turn, right? You see them turning nice and slow. All right, so if I go back to the main timeline, you'll see that I've got this main icons group, because otherwise we would have a lot of groups and things are going to be really unorganized. All right, so here we can see that they separate out, but then they don't do anything, right? They just sit there and turn. But I want this whole thing to rotate in a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the spot where they separate out, and then here is where I'm going to select this icon, and I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to hit add animation, and we're going to choose rotation. All right, so on this first one, we're going to go ahead and go to our properties here, and under properties, we're going to go to rotation, and we're going to set that one to be 0, right? And then on the second one, we're going to hit properties, and we're going to set this one to be -90. All right. So now when I play this back, you'll see that it comes in and then it rotates out, and it's happening really fast, right? So if we want to control that, what we need to do is, let me zoom out a little bit here, and then I can pull this out so that the farther apart your keyframes are, the slower your animation is, right? So I expanded that keyframe away from that first one. So now let's see what that speed looks like. And it's going there, and it's kind of has a rotation that I'm not really fond of, right? So what I can do is I can double click in here, go to our easing, and it's set to smooth. So maybe I want it to be linear. So then let's play that back. And then there we go. It gives me a little bit more of a smoother rotation, which I like. All right. So that is how you can adjust your icons. And again, you can find these icons online. You can go and import them in, or if you want to create your own icons or import in stuff that you have different logos, you can do the same and create this same type of effect to create this, right? But again, this is recreating this exact iCloud animation that we have going on here, right? So that's the icons. Now let's go ahead and add in our emojis, right? That's the fun part. So the first thing I need to do to start with my first emoji is I'm going to go ahead and go to my 3D creator, and I'm going to go ahead and drag in my emoji mail, right? I'll just drag him in here, right here on the timeline. And let's kind of just line him up here with that closer to the beginning of our session here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on let's zoom in so you can see what I'm looking at. And I'm at an idle first, so that's where we're going to start, as an idle. Now let's add a few more animations. So I'm going to go ahead and click on his emoji mail character here, and then over here on the actions underneath settings, I'm going to go to add new actions, and we're going to go to a thumbs up, and then we're going to go to add one more new action, and we're going to go back to our idle. All right, so now we've got our character set up. Now let's go ahead and group him. So I want him to have a circle around, kind of like a profile bubble behind him. So let's go ahead and right click and let's click on group. And then I'm gonna go ahead and rename this group and let's call him emoji1. All right, now I can double click inside this group and now I've got my character head, and now I can go and add on the plus icon up here, I can add a circle, and let's drag that circle underneath our emoji male there. And you can see it's already got a circle built out around him. And then we can obviously make this circle a little bigger to fill out his head there. And then you do have the option to change the color of your background for your circle, right? So maybe I want it to be a little more like this color right here. All right, and then here is where I can click on my emoji, and then under customize, under settings, this is where you can make your character your own, right? So you can give him a hat, right? You can change his hair. Maybe we want to come back to hats and we want to scroll up and say none, right? Or we can go to our glasses. We could do this kind of thing, right? You can also save presets. So I went ahead and saved the presets for our previous character. So I can come here and I can right click, or I can just click on him, sorry, and it'll add him in, right? And then I can go in here and tweak him a little more. Maybe I don't like his glasses, right? So maybe I want to give him some of these guys, right? So you can do that. And then of course you can always go in and change colors if you need to. You've got change your skin tones if you want. You can go in and change the hair, right? You can kind of make it darker if you want, or lighter. Eyelashes, hats, we can change the color of the hat. So maybe let's go ahead and just make this here, this blue color. And then you can change, you obviously has more customization because you can change just the brim a bit, or you can change the top. So you have a lot of options, as well as even changing the sunglasses. So maybe we want to make these more of a limer green, so we can go there. All right, so we've got our character set up for the male, right? So now let's go back to our timeline, and now we've got him set in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and I want him to animate in, right? Right now he should come in right as this breaks apart and that center circle right here disappears, right? So as that disappears, he should pop in. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull him to about right here, and let's go ahead and start some animations. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and right click on my emoji1, click on add animation, and then choose position, scale, and opacity. For my easing, I'm gonna leave it as smooth for both in and out for now, all right? So I'm gonna take my first keyframe, go to properties, and I'm gonna change my scale, and let's make it about 92. And then let's have it start where he's kind of just up a little bit there as well. And then we're gonna take our opacity and put that at 0. So he's gonna transition in nicely, or he's gonna fade in essentially. And I'm gonna take that second keyframe, go back to my properties here, and let's go ahead and scale him down a little bit. We'll go to 83%. And then we're gonna take our opacity and we're gonna bring him up to 100. And then for our, we're gonna bring him center, right? So right now he's kind of up a little bit. So we started him that way, and then we want him to end kind of in the middle of the icons here, right? So it's a little more aligned properly, all right? And then remember, if you have your keyframe far apart from each other, those animations happen slower. So let's go ahead and bring that down so this happens a little faster. And let's go ahead and bring our keyframes so that first one is right at the start. So now I can play this back and then buried. Nice transition in. All right, so as you can see, he puts a thumbs up, and then the emojis change, or not the emojis, the icons change. So once those icons change, that's when I'm gonna bring in my second character. So I need to transition him out. So I'm gonna go ahead and right about here, let's go ahead and start transitioning him. So let's go ahead and right click add animation, and we're gonna choose position, scale, and opacity again. And then let's drag this to the start of our cursor here. On our first keyframe, we're gonna go back to our properties, and he's set to 83, and that's good, but our opacity is set to 100. So we're gonna leave this alone because this is our transition out, right? All we were worrying about right now is our end keyframe. Where do we want him to go? So I'm gonna select that end keyframe, and let's go ahead and go to properties here. And then we're going to set this we're gonna scale him up at 140 right here. So he's gonna kind of scale up, and then he's gonna scale down and then disappear from opacity to transition out, right? So he scales up, and we can even have this come a little faster. And now let's go ahead and move our cursor to the side here, right click again, add animation, and let's go ahead and choose just our scale and opacity, all right? So from here, what I can do is I'm gonna go ahead and click on this guy, and we're gonna go to our properties. He's gonna stay at 140, and it's going to stay at 100. And here's where we're going to transition him out. Let me bring in our second keyframe here. All right, so I'm going to select our end keyframe, go to properties, and from here, our scale is going to go to 120. He's going to kind of like he's scaling away, and our opacity is going to hit 0. All right, so he's fading out completely, right? So if I go here and play this back, he does a nice little zoom up or scale up to a scale down, and then his opacity goes away, so he transitions out, right? So that's a nice little ending thing. So right as he goes away and starts to fade out, that's when our second emoji is going to come in. All right, so I've already built out our second emoji here, and it's the same process as building the first. So if you repeat the steps for this first emoji, you will then create your second emoji, and the same style is you've got your emoji in here for emoji female, and then you have your circle, right? So if I go back here, you'll see that I've already added her transition in animations for there. And then as it plays, she does her thing. She does a wink animation instead of a thumbs up, right? So you can easily change that out for whichever animation works for you best. And then she'll transition out. And the things start to end because I've only done 2 rotations of this. So if you wanted to keep adding more icons or more emojis, you could then add more characters to extend your scene even longer. So this is only built for 2, but just to show you the process and how you can create this, recreate this on your own, and start using it for your applications is really awesome. All right. So hopefully you got some really cool quick tips out of here. Can't wait to see what y'all create, and I'll catch you on the next tutorial.